Led Zeppelin's manager Peter Grant wasn't just a businessman. He was a violent enforcer who allegedly secured the band's fortune through mob-like intimidation, famously culminating in the brutal 1977 backstage beating of an employee while the band played on stage. But beyond the violence lay a darker web of occult obsessions involving Jimmy Page and a reckless negligence that many believe directly accelerated the tragic death of drummer John Bonham. This is the true story of the man who bullied the world to build a legend, only to watch it crumble under the weight of his own tyranny. To understand the darkness, you have to visualize the man. Peter Grant stood 6'5" and weighed over 300 pounds, a former wrestling champion who loomed over the slender frames of Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. While the band projected an image of mystical fey artists, Grant was the concrete wall that protected them, earning him the ominous nickname, The Beast, among terrified record executives. He didn't just manage the band. He viewed Led Zeppelin as his personal property, and he was willing to break bones to protect his investment. This physical dominance was the foundation of their empire, ensuring that no one ever said no to the band without fearing for their safety. What was your first impression of Led Zeppelin? Let us know in the comments. Before Grant, promoters held all the power, but The Beast flipped the industry upside down by demanding an unprecedented 90% of the gate money, leaving promoters with scraps. Legend has it that Grant would walk into negotiation meetings in New York and slam a pistol onto the desk, silently daring anyone to offer less than his terms. He treated the music business like a shakedown, and surprisingly, the terrified industry capitulated, funneling millions into the band's pockets almost overnight. This wasn't just business acumen. It was armed robbery with a soundtrack, establishing a financial dominance that no other band, not even the Beatles, had ever achieved. Grant orchestrated a masterclass in psychological warfare by refusing to release singles in the UK, forcing fans to buy entire albums just to hear Stairway to Heaven. This wasn't merely a sales tactic, it was a control mechanism designed to manufacture a desperate hunger among the fan base, turning casual listeners into cult-like devotees. By restricting access to the music, he made Led Zeppelin feel like a secret society that you had to buy your way into, driving album sales through the roof. It was a manipulation of supply and demand that bordered on cruel, ensuring the band was always elusive, always wanted, and always expensive. Do you remember buying a whole album just for one song? Tell us which one below. His possessiveness turned violent regarding bootlegs. Grant was known to storm into record stores that sold unauthorized Zeppelin records and smash the vinyls with his bare hands. At concerts, if he spotted professional recording equipment in the crowd, he would personally pour buckets of water over thousands of dollars of electronics or take an axe to the cables. This wasn't just copyright protection, it was a paranoid obsession with controlling every single note the band played, ensuring no one profited off them without his permission. He patrolled the venues like a shark, and God help you if you were caught with a microphone in your hand. This level of control is unimaginable today, but it was his standard day-to-day procedure. Grant didn't hire security professionals. He hired criminals, surrounding the band with a Praetorian guard that included the notorious tour manager Richard Cole and London gangster John Bonham. Bonham, an actor with deep ties to the Cray twins, brought a genuine underworld edge to the tour, turning the backstage area into a fortress where the laws of the outside world didn't apply. This entourage insulated the band so thoroughly that they lost touch with reality, believing they were untouchable gods protected by legitimate mob muscle. It was a recipe for disaster, as bringing violent street toughs into the delicate ecosystem of a rock tour was like inviting wolves to guard the sheep house. The darkness wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, centering on Jimmy Page's intense fascination with the occultist Aleister Crowley. Page went so far as to purchase Crowley's former home, Boleskine House, on the shores of Loch Ness, a move that Grant surprisingly indulged and protected. Conspiracy theorists argue that Grant allowed Page to dive deep into these dark waters because it kept the guitarist isolated and dependent on Grant as his anchor to the real world. Instead of pulling his client back from the edge, Grant stood guard while Page explored the abyss, feeding the rumors that the band was dabbling in black magic. This environment birthed the most enduring rock legend of all, the theory that the band members, save for John Paul Jones, signed a Faustian pact for global fame. In this narrative, Peter Grant wasn't just a manager, but the gatekeeper who facilitated the transaction, trading their souls for a decade of dominance. While obviously a myth, the sheer speed of their ascent and the string of tragedies that followed made the story incredibly plausible to the superstitious public of the 1970s. Grant loved these rumors because they added a dangerous allure to the band, proving that he would use even the devil's reputation to sell tickets. Do you believe in the Zeppelin curse, or was it just bad luck? Whether supernatural or coincidental, a Zeppelin curse seemed to stalk the band, manifesting in a series of bizarre accidents and near-death experiences. From Robert Plant's horrific car accident in Rhodes to the mysterious illnesses plaguing the crew, it felt as though the negative energy Grant projected was bouncing back onto them. Grant's response to these calamities was always to push harder, ignoring the universe's warning signs in favor of keeping the machine running. The Beast believed he could bully fate just like he bullied promoters, but the mounting casualty list suggested otherwise. One of the few times Grant met his match was during a legendary summit with Elvis Presley in 1974. While the band was starstruck, Grant stood toe-to-toe with the Memphis Mafia, Elvis's own heavy-handed security team, earning the King's respect in a room full of alpha males. It was a surreal moment where the two biggest power brokers in music history collided, and Elvis reportedly liked Grant because he recognized a fellow kingpin who controlled his empire with an iron fist. This meeting cemented Grant's status. He wasn't just a staff member, he was a peer to the biggest icons on the planet. Grant's territorial aggression extended to his peers, and he famously terrorized the management teams of The Who and the Rolling Stones to ensure Zeppelin remained the top dog. He would threaten to pull Zeppelin from massive festivals if their name wasn't significantly larger than the other bands on the promotional posters. This wasn't petty vanity. It was a calculated power move to visually demonstrate that every other rock star was merely a supporting act to his clients. He scorched the earth around the band, making enemies of the entire industry to ensure Led Zeppelin stood alone at the summit. By the mid-70s, the alcohol that fueled the early tours was replaced by mountains of cocaine, and Grant's personality shifted from protective bear to paranoid tyrant. The drug amplified his natural aggression, making him see enemies in every shadow and turning minor slights into reasons for all-out war. This chemical change marked the beginning of the end, as the fun camaraderie of the early days dissolved into jagged, drug-fueled suspicion. Grant was no longer just fighting for the band. He was fighting imaginary ghosts, and his judgment began to fracture under the strain of addiction. Grant constructed a hermetically sealed bubble around the band, cutting off access to their families, the press, and reality itself. Within this echo chamber, the band's worst impulses were indulged and amplified because Grant ensured that no one was ever allowed to tell them no. This isolation meant that when problems arose, whether addiction or personal crisis, there was no outside voice of reason to intervene. They were trapped in a golden cage of Grant's making, where the only reality was the tour, the drugs, and the stage. The true cost of this business-first mentality was laid bare when Robert Plant's 5-year-old son, Karak, tragically died of a stomach virus in 1977. While the band was devastated, rumors persist that Grant immediately began calculating how soon he could get a grieving Plant back on the road to fulfill contract obligations. This moment exposed the cold machinery behind the manager. The Beast was seemingly more concerned with the stalled revenue stream than the shattered heart of his lead singer. It was a fracture in their relationship that never truly healed, showing the limits of Grant's family loyalty. The violence finally caught up with them in Oakland, where Grant and his enforcers savagely beat a stagehand for a perceived slight, leading to a SWAT team surrounding the band's hotel. Unlike previous victims, promoter Bill Graham refused to be intimidated and pressed charges, resulting in Grant's arrest and a shattered aura of invincibility. This was the turning point where the law finally pierced the bubble, proving that Grant was not a god, but merely a violent man subject to the penal code. It's shocking that this actually happened backstage. Amidst the chaos, drummer John Bonham was the one member Grant couldn't control, largely because they were mirrors of each other, violent, heavy drinkers, and fiercely loyal. Grant indulged Bonham's destructive behavior, covering up his brawls and hotel trashing, rather than getting him the help he desperately needed. This lack of discipline wasn't friendship, it was negligence, as Grant allowed the drummer's alcoholism to spiral unchecked because he feared confronting the one man as volatile as himself. They were partners in chaos, speeding toward a cliff that everyone else could see coming. By the 1980 rehearsals, it was an open secret that Bonham was physically and mentally collapsing, yet the machine demanded to move forward. Sources suggest that Grant, desperate to restore the band's glory and his own power, chose to ignore the drummer's deteriorating state to ensure the upcoming North American tour proceeded. This is the darkest stain on Grant's legacy. The accusation that he prioritized the Led Zeppelin brand over the life of his friend. He was the manager, the one person with the authority to hit the brakes, but he kept his foot on the gas. On September 25, 1980, the inevitable happened. John Bonham was found dead, having choked after a massive binge, effectively ending the greatest band in the world. For Grant, the grief was compounded by the terrifying realization that his purpose, his power, and his protection had failed. The fortress he had built with violence and intimidation couldn't stop death, and the beast was instantly reduced to a broken man. It wasn't just the loss of a drummer, it was the total collapse of the empire he had sacrificed his humanity to build. Following the band's dissolution, Peter Grant's fall was swift and tragic. He retreated into seclusion, creating a fortress of solitude filled with antiques and heroin. Without the adrenaline of the deal and the war of the tour, he was consumed by his addictions and health issues, becoming a recluse who rarely left his estate. It was a grim fulfillment of the deal with the devil narrative. Once the magic of the music was gone, the man who managed it was left with nothing but his demons. Do you think the band could have continued with a different drummer? Tell us your thoughts below. Peter Grant remains one of the most polarizing figures in music history, a brilliant advocate who made his clients kings, but a tyrant whose methods left a trail of destruction. He protected Led Zeppelin from the world, but he failed to protect them from themselves, and perhaps from him. Ultimately, we are left with a difficult question. Would Led Zeppelin have become the legends they are without the monster guarding the gate, or did his darkness extinguish their light too soon? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more investigations into rock's darkest secrets. Hungry for more rock and roll stories? Click one of our videos on screen to continue watching. We'll see you there. Until next time. This is Rock Rewind signing off.